Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Dr. Kiran Hashmi. I am the head of the department at the Department of Education Institute of Business Management. We have recently started this new series of podcasts by the name of the Staffroom. The purpose of this podcast, basically, this entire series is to bring educationists on board and to talk about different emerging areas, concepts, approaches that the world is now getting into. As being educationists, we thought that it's important to orient, to aware, and to educate. And of course, technology is one of the most important mediums these days. So, in this entire series of podcasts, we'll be coming up with very new ideas, not only to talk about, but also to share that how those ideas are actually well implemented in the classrooms. जो आज हमारा पहला पॉडकास्ट है इसमें वी हैव एन alumni here who is not only an alumni but a very dear colleague and a friend, working in the field of education past many years, has been into professional development and teacher education, and it was a privilege to have her here. So we have with us Dr. Nancy Lobo. Thank you, Nancy, for coming here, accepting the invitation.
Thank you.
Dr. Nancy Lobo is one of our alumni. She did her PhD from here. और इनकी PhD में her research was on a very interesting topic. That was on edupreneurship, family-run schools. Something I think we all have seen on the streets, on the cities, everywhere. So when Nancy picked up this topic and when I thought of having somebody for this podcast, I thought, why not to talk about edupreneurship? And at the very important area, which is an emerging area. So Nancy, thank you very much. The floor is all yours. I would like you to talk about and share what actually edupreneurship and how edupreneurship works in our educational setup.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran. I suppose it's a huge topic, and we've just started researching on it. But it's a newer concept than most concepts. Entrepreneur has been there for many years, even over a century. But now edupreneurship has been in the literature from the 1990s.
Okay.
But there is still very little research being done on edupreneurship. So I suppose you're wondering, what is edupreneurship?
Yeah, because I'm actually aware of the word entrepreneurship,
Yes.
which are like major businesses, right? But businesses within education is something which is new to me.
Yes. It's all sorts of businesses. It's not only about schools, but it's any business in the education sector. So take somebody who starts a shop selling textbooks or books. That's all. And they're starting it as a business. That would also classify as edupreneurship. However, my research was basically related to edupreneurship by family-owned schools.
Okay.
So it's in relation to schools and how did they start and what was the reason behind it. So interestingly, there are lots of
Entrepreneurs around.
edupreneurs around, and basically family-owned in most cases. You go down the street,
And you find one family running a school, yes.
and I think it's interesting because they are contributing towards promoting education. So, and they would, of course, be privately owned schools. So they classify under privately owned schools. I have specifically looked into edupreneurship by family-owned schools.
Okay.
So when we talk about families starting and running a school, there are all sorts of schools that you could have. It could be a single person starting it. It could be a few family members. It can also be family members who are distant relatives, but they are in the business together. So they begin a school. In terms of my study, I looked at schools that started way back as about within 10 years of independence.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So you went back to that time.
I couldn't research much about exactly what happened at that time because in most cases, the person starting the business, the school, is not live today.
Of course.
So, and that was purposely done.
Okay.
Because if you look at schools which are over 60, 70 years old, it's very interesting to see that how family members have joined
Have
it.
joined and gone,
How
yeah,
they have
and they have taken
continued
it as
with
a
it.
legacy now. And there are many
Yes,
families who are
yes.
doing it.
Oh, yes,
Renowned
yes.
families, by the way.
I mean, there are some which have not started that way back. I think the trend was more towards the 80s.
Okay.
It had to
Post
do with,
nationalization,
yes,
yes.
post
Post
nationalization.
nationalization, when yeah the
A lot of schools
when
started
private sector
again
was asked to join the
join
team.
them. In fact, I clearly remember there was one school that was taken away by due to nationalization, and the school shut down over a passage of time. So the child, right, took over once schools were denationalized. The child took over that school, tried to get it back functioning, but then decided, no, 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 that's too much to do. Let's just start from the beginning. And based on experiences, based on other family members, they started a school and very successful today. So, however, this was not in my study. They were from soon after independence. So, I identified about 3 schools which have large number of children studying there today, and that's what I looked at. So, some of the key things is how did it actually start?
Yes.
And most people would be interested in asking, how do you start a
How do you
business?
start?
I think, given the nature and the period of time, there was that total desire to start a school for the benefit of the population, for the children of the country.
Okay.
There weren't enough schools after partition. There was a dearth of schools. And they started it, and some of them even started in one room,
Okay.
rooms of their house,
Okay.
right? So I found that so interesting.
It is. It is indeed.
And it didn't take them a whole lot of money to start it.
Yeah. So they utilized their own resources, their own rooms, and they just started doing it as a CSR, maybe. A social responsibility to educate the children.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you hear they started with 40 children or they started with 10, 20 children, and they've got it running to about 2,000 children today. So that was very interesting to learn. And it was the passion, the desire to do something good for the country. And so they started off with their schools, and it grew and grew and grew.
And now we see a number of them around.
And we see a lot.
So, Dr. Nancy, from your research also and from your personal experience, because of course you are also working in one of a family-run school, how well do you think they are really meeting not only the standards but also coming up with new ideas that caters to the need of 21st century?
I think they take that responsibility seriously. I think there are various factors. Okay, one is the good name of the school. They want to maintain that, so they keep up with education. And today, education is incomplete without all this technology.
Agreed.
They're encouraging professional development.
Okay.
They are following up on their teachers and the kind of training they're doing. So all this is a part of the work that they're doing. And I think it's very important that they maintain standards today. So you find them, moving for the better options of education. You'll find them having the Cambridge system. They're now looking at AQA. They're looking at the Aga Khan board, right?
So they're going for quality assessments.
They are
basically.
going for quality assessments. They're also very focused on how well their children are placed,
Okay.
particularly university placements.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of work being done, not just for providing the quality education, but also ensuring that that education is put to good use. So the children who are the future of our country, they are the future human capital for our country, for our economy, and training them to cope with the demands of society. So technology is in doing presentations, programming also is being taught. So they're doing a lot of stuff.
So this brings me to another question. The kind of contribution or the legacy you're talking about, are these particularly related to the ones which started off, let's say, post-independence, or the ones who have spent like 40, 50 years, they have, maintained their name, sustained for so long? Or do you see a similar kind of a quality or rigor in the schools which are now coming up? Some of them have been there in since 21st century have started. We have seen a lot of families coming into education business with so many novel ideas. Some sustain, some don't. Right. So the question actually, I'm not going in the comparative analysis of the two eras, but I'm just trying to understand that as probably a teacher educator or as a parent, as an adult or a citizen who has got some brains, which school actually is really serving the purpose, and they're not only for money minting purposes.
I think that's a really good question. And I think there are all sorts.
Okay.
You have families who want good quality education. And when they can afford it, they can pay those high fee. They go for it, right? And it's generally to the private sector, to one of the well-known names or whatever. Now, the schools that I studied were providing education for a solid, good middle class.
Yes.
Right? And they have systems also in place today that, yes, the middle class still goes there, but you have, because they have such a fantastic name, you have all sorts in the school.
Agreed.
Right? You
So
also
you're actually catering to all stratas of
Yes,
society,
you do.
not catering to one
Yes.
particular group.
And they're coming in for the good name of the school.
Yeah, true.
Right?
It's not only the name. I think it's also the value that they carry.
Yes.
It's the name that they carry.
I think values, you mentioned values,
Yeah,
and I
values.
just thought to myself, values came through as a very important trait of the edupreneur who started the school.
Okay.
That ethical, moral values was important. That honesty level, that dedication, that hard work. I'm not saying they don't do it today, but
It mainly started off with that.
it started off.
So the foundations comes in from those core fundamental values.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And the values are maintained. Now, I think newer schools, which have recently started, may be struggling with, I'm not saying they don't have values. Of course, they do have values. But they are also struggling to get people, the people they hire, to come onto their team and their understanding of the similar values that they have. And I think we have the vision. It's the vision and the mission. I firmly believe it's the vision and mission that leads people forward and moves them on. So some who are there for the money, of course, make their money. We all know that. And I feel they do provide quality education because they have to. It's a whole competition. Today, there's a lot of competition.
Agreed.
So those challenges have to be met. So ultimately, they do provide quality education, or they try to. But yes, we keep hearing of instances where it's not there.
It's not working the way it was supposed
But having said that, I think it's something that the government is also speaking about. In the government sector, all teachers have to be trained.
Yes.
In the private sector, it hasn't become
a trait so far, yeah.
Yes.
So far, a regularity.
Regularity. And I think anyone who comes into teaching should have a basic
Professional
B.Ed.
education. Agreed.
B.Ed.
Agreed.
Yeah. You know what it's like.
Of course, I do.
going through,
Of course, who else would know about
yes.
it? Yes.
But it makes a difference. And as an observer of teachers, I can immediately tell whether that's a trained teacher
Or not there. A
untrained
novice one.
novice teacher
Yeah.
who's struggling, has no idea, no clue what to do. So all of that.
So, from entrepreneur perspective, because you've just spoken about B.Ed and professionally qualified teachers, how important do you think that within the teacher education programs, entrepreneurship is added and it's taught? We do have a course on entrepreneurship in our B.Ed program and also in our MPhil program. But if you do a survey of the other universities or the other institutions who are offering these professional courses, I don't think entrepreneurship is there. So what do you recommend? Should it be there? Shouldn't it be there? Should the teachers be informed about the notion of having their own business within education, or what?
I think it's a good idea. Of course, it shouldn't be at the B.Ed level. They're learning the ropes.
Yes.
Master's level, yes. And there are people out there who want to come into education but don't necessarily want to get into teaching. So they need to understand what teaching is all about, but they also need skills in starting maybe a school or running a business or opening a shop or opening supplies, providing supplies, things like that. Whatever they're interested in. You'll find like an art person would be interested in providing quality supplies. So they may address that and take that on as a business. Or there are also businesses that provide resources, and today with so much of online teaching, we have to buy those online resources. Not all of it comes free. So these are businesses started by edupreneurs who are interested, who see what should I say, an opportunity, right? And they start it. It has to be an opportunity, and an opportunity at the right time. And then, of course, you continue and open up your business.
Okay. So how do you see, again, my question comes back to the same point. So how do you see our teachers who are taking professional education see themselves as future entrepreneurs? Do they or don't they?
I think the general trend is they don't see themselves as edupreneurs, right? But I'm catching on to your thought, and it's given me a new idea
Yes.
and a new area of research. Is what about the teachers?
Yes.
Yeah, who want to start. Now, it's not necessary that they start school.
A school only. It could be anything.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
And I think there are possibilities there that they can look into it. Like maybe develop lesson plans.
Of course, resources.
So tedious to make.
Yes.
So you have your ready-made your lesson plan. You just
Setting them.
Well, you can adapt them also. So there may be things like that they could do.
Right? See, why teachers came in my mind, because we all are teacher educators, right? And we deal with teachers every single day. So one notion that I've actually gathered post-COVID, especially, the teachers are now going back to that cocoon where they were earlier into. I think COVID opened that cocoon.
Yes.
Right? So you see, understanding the notion of entrepreneurship, I was only thinking that how we can bring our teachers who are getting that qualification, that professional qualification, of also to think that how they can, besides being a teacher in a school, how else can they stand on their feet? Because this is also kind of financial independence. And we are talking a lot about women's financial independence these days. So you see, that was my hook.
I think, even the elementary classes, those levels, there's so many resources you need to prepare.
Agreed.
And creativity, innovativeness can come in where the teacher prepares these resources and teaches people how to use them.
True.
So, yeah, there's lots of possibility there.
So we are having a very interesting conversation, Dr. Nancy. One last question that I want to ask you, again, coming in from the teacher education perspective. So when you train and when you organize sessions, professional development sessions, and again, referring to your research only, how do you integrate edupreneurship, if you do, into your teaching? And how your teachers were under your observation or your supervision are actually getting a direction of these as well, this particular area as well.
Um, Edupreneurship in terms of creativity, right? We want our teachers to be creative. So we demonstrate,
Okay.
right, in our
Okay.
workshops. We give lessons,
Okay. You
okay?
do.
The teachers observe and then they try to adapt things to their level and their needs, right? Depending on the subject also. So I think these teachers go ahead and start becoming creative. That creativity comes. And as teachers in the classroom, they have absolute right, and they should be given the right to teach in the best possible manner. And they do.
They do that.
I mean, they're using all sorts of resources. They're thinking about better ways to do things. They are developing worksheets, of all kinds. So I find that interesting.
Very interesting.
That they do it.
Very interesting. Now, just the last part. How do you think your time here at the Department of Education actually made you become who you are? I'm just asking out of my curiosity.
I think it has a huge impact, right? It's not just about doing your PhD. It's about the whole experience over there. Everything is a learning experience. I think it makes you more confident. It challenges you to take a stance on things, like to agree or disagree and express your opinion. But however, the values are so strong over here that at all times you need to be aware of other people's opinions and be open to the ideas. So I think in a complete way, it helps you develop into the person you are.
Agreed.
And I think every institution along the way, if you look at your schooling, basic values, basic education, then your college degree, then your B.Ed education, right? M.Ed education, and now PhD. All these institutions contribute.
They do. Definitely. They make you who you are today.
They make you confident. They make you open to a whole lot of ideas.
They open avenues for you, open avenues for life for you. Now, just again, because you're a teacher educator and all the things that are coming from that perspective only. You did say in one of the discussions earlier that professional education is important. I would really like you to stress this to the audience and especially to the teachers, the importance of professional development. And not only development, also professional qualification of being into the profession that actually makes the other professions.
I think starting with the qualifications, if you want to be a teacher, go get the degree. Okay. I suppose I should share this. Never wanted to be a teacher.
Nor did I. But now you see, we are such passionate teacher educators.
Absolutely. And the wisdom of our elders has some role to play.
Agreed.
And so I was sent into a training, basic certificate of teaching. And from there, it was teaching, and then there was no stopping. So I think that's good if it happens. However, we do realize not everyone can afford training. There are some who learn on the job, and that's equally important. So in terms of professional development being provided, the in-service aspect of it while they're on job has to be structured. And not every teacher is at the same level.
Agreed.
Right? So you have to design things for different levels. And then you need to design things for the latest need or development. So with technology is how to use, let's say, Padlet, or all these resources that we have. How to use video, something as simple as showing a video has to be made effective. So there's a lot of work to be done in professional development. And whatever the school is, it doesn't have to necessarily be a family-owned school. It could be any school. I think the schools need to have a professional development department, right? Because they are teachers who have trained much early on, and they need further training and development.
And maybe they need to refresh their
Yes,
concepts and
refresher
skills.
courses. There are lots of organizations here
Doing
that doing that. You can send them out, you can provide it in school, but there must be some form of follow-up, right? And of course, what comes with it is also some motivation for the teachers, apart from being such fantastic teachers and their kids coming back years later and, telling their teachers, oh, you were my favorite teacher. I love that when children say it. I think now I've lost my thought. But I think it's important that we have a kind of a follow-up on where they're going and how they are training themselves. So are they, being, well, motivation is mostly intrinsic. It should be intrinsic at this stage when you're professional, but it's also the extrinsic comes through salary increments. So structures like that in place encourage teachers to go on workshops or whatever. Systems in place which will offer a certain amount of cost being borne by the school or the organization will help these teachers. Not everyone can afford a training.
So you think the family-run businesses, the schools actually, they support teachers in their professional qualification and professional development?
You'll be surprised. They understand it so well.
Wow, I'm impressed too.
Yes. My research was on 3 schools specifically, and all of them have a well-run professional development department, a department looking after the whole school. It doesn't mean you need all these people in the team, but you need structures in place to work with people in school. So subject coordinators, heads, need to be helped and guided as to what kind of training to be provided. So it's not just how to teach. It's also how to manage your school, how to run things, how to organize things, a whole lot of things.
Right.
So it's more like an assistant to the principal,
Agreed.
if you think about it in that way.
Manner. So this actually brings me to the last, a conclusion of the conversation, that even if you're a teacher or whatsoever, edupreneurship gives you new avenues, number one.
Yes.
Plus, if you're an edupreneur, you need to be into continuous professional development. And if you want to be into edupreneurship, you need to have the professional qualification required to be an edupreneur.
Yes.
If I summed it correctly.
Actually, it was interesting. The edupreneurs were interested in also their own training and development. So they learned on the job. They learned how to run things. And now, after a passage of time, when you have the children coming in, the succession plan being implemented, you find that other family members join in. And if they don't know how it is to run a school, yes, there are problems. I won't say there aren't problems.
There are problems.
But then they learn on the job. They're smart enough to learn on the job. And they go for trainings here and there, and they learn things. And they come and implement. And they're always open to asking questions and like, why do you need to do this? Why do you need the finances to do it? But it's a good question.
This brings us to the close of the program. Thank you very much, Dr. Nancy. It
Thank you,
was
Dr. Kiran.
lovely talking to you, and I think the audiences who are listening to us will really be getting a lot of new ideas about not only the concept but also how to get into this entirely new notion of entrepreneurship. Thank you very much, everyone. With this, we come to an end of the Staff Room series, and inshallah, we'll meet you very soon with another interesting topic.